This is video 6.5, and it is all about equations and solutions. So this is really the last thing we have to learn in this unit, and we've already learned about what an equation is and how to write one from a situation, and also how to solve a one-step equation with one variable. So now we're just going to look at solutions and how you can represent them and check if a solution actually makes an equation true. So these are the TEKS that we are covering, 6.10b and 6.9b. And so these are just some words to know. Pretty much you already know equation, variable, solution. Number line is from a previous unit. We're going to look at how you can represent a solution on a number line. And then substitution is a new vocabulary word we haven't really talked a lot about yet, but you'll see what that means today when we talk about equations. So a solution basically is your answer when you solve an equation. It just is the value represented by a variable in an equation. And so you can determine if a number is a solution to an equation by checking it using substitution. So if you think of the word substitution, if you have a substitute teacher, that means that your teacher is not there that day and somebody else comes and replaces them for a day and stands in their place. So when we talk about math, substitution means you're replacing the variable with a number. So here's an example where maybe I gave you the equation 3 plus y equals 7, and I said, is y equals 5, would that be a solution to this equation? So if y was 5, would that make this true? So using substitution, I basically just fill 5 in for the y. So I'm replacing the variable with the value, and I have 3 plus 5 equals 7. Does 3 plus 5 actually equal 7? No, it equals 8. So usually if something is not equal, we put a slash through the equal sign like that. That's our symbol showing us that it's not equal. And so this would not be a solution to this equation. Y equals 5 is not the solution. If I have y equals 4, this one is the solution. I put 4 in for y, and I end up getting that 7 equals 7, which is true. They are equal, so that means that y does equal 4 in this situation. So obviously right now, like we've said before, the equations are pretty simple because they're just one step. And so a lot of you might be thinking, why do I need to do this? I know that 3 plus 4 is 7 without having to write out all these steps. However, as you get older and you go into 7th and 8th grade and then beyond that, you're going to have more complicated and complex equations that have multiple steps. And so it's just really important right now, while it's pretty straightforward and easy one-step equation, for you to understand how to show your work and how to do these processes, so that way as it gets harder, you're not having to relearn how to do the equation and show your work as well as do a harder equation. So I would just really encourage you, please make sure you show your work and you do everything, even if it seems a little bit obvious on some of them to you. Just get that practice and we'll be forming good habits. So we've talked about number lines before, mostly with our rational numbers and integer units, but solutions can be represented on a number line by just placing a closed dot on whatever value it is. So basically, if your solution is x equals 3 for some equation, if you have a number line, you just place a dot on 3, and that means that that's representing the number. So pretty much that is really not anything super complicated. You guys have been pretty familiar with locating numbers on a number line, and these are for right now at least, going to be integer numbers. So if, once it starts getting into rational numbers where you might have a fraction, you're just placing a dot wherever that number value is located on a number line. So here's an example just from start to finish where you'd have an equation, you'd have to solve it, we're going to check the solution, we're going to model it, and put it on the number line. So we're kind of tying everything together. So if I gave you this equation that just says solve, y minus 6 equals negative 2. So first of all, this equation is modeled over here by this picture. So remember, we can think of it as like a scale where whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, so you keep it balanced. And so if I were to, model this, I would have to add a positive for every negative so that I could use inverse operations and get 0 pairs. So I'm going to add a positive for every single one of these little negatives so that they cancel out on the left side. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. So I'd end up having 6 positives over here. Sorry, my mouse is kind of slow, so it's taking a little bit longer than normal. But anyway, you would have to add the both things to each side so you keep it balanced. We've talked about that a lot. And so, oh, okay, finally. So now all these little positive and negative pairs, they cancel out to 0. So there's a 0 pair, there's a 0 pair, there's a 0 pair, 0 pair, 0 pair, and 0 pair. So now all you're left with is y, which is good. You're trying to get it by itself. That's the whole point of solving an equation. And over on this side, you have just 2 0 pairs. 1, 2. Then you can look at what you're left with, and that's positive 4. So if I look at the algebraic way I do this, I identify y minus 6 equals negative 2. Okay, if I'm subtracting 6 or I have negative 6, the inverse operation of that would be to add 6. That would end up canceling this part out right here. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So on the left, I just have y equals negative 2 plus 6. Don't forget your integer operations and rules would be positive 4. So there's my solution right there. So remember, you can also, if you want to draw a line down the equal sign, so you make sure if you add 6 over here, you add 6 over here. That might be a good idea, especially as we're starting out. So then if so we solved it. Cool. Now we're going to check it. So remember, if you take the original equation and now we're going to use substitution, we're replacing the variable with the value we think the variable is, just to double check. So that's also a super cool thing about equations, is you can know if you're doing it right or not. There's a way for you to check your work, so you can know if you got the answer correct or not. And if you didn't, you can go back and fix it. So I'm going to put a 4 in place of the y. And I'm just going to see, does 4 minus 6 equal negative 2? Yes, 4 minus 6 is negative 2. And so negative 2 equals negative 2. Cool, this solution is correct. So you'll see up here my model, I have my solution right there. And so I would just be making sure that that is true. So now I have my solution. I know that I checked it. 4 equals 4. I know that that y is equal to 4. So I'm replacing that. And basically, I'm going to go mark this solution on a number line by just putting a dot on 4. So that is basically it from start to finish. You have an equation, solve it, check it, model it, and put it on the number line. So now you can try, here's just another little equation you can try to solve yourself. You can draw the model if you want, or you can just do it algebraically in your journal. Then practice checking it, and then also marking the value on the number line wherever that number is found. So these are just the questions you should be able to answer at this point. So if you don't know them, you need to go back and rewatch. So you need to know what a solution is. You need to know how you represent a solution on a number line. Basically, just put a dot on the number. You need to know what substitution is as it relates to math. So it's basically just replacing a variable with a value. And then you also need to know how you know if a value is a solution to an equation. So basically, you use substitution to figure out if a variable equals a certain number. You just substitute the number in place of the variable in the equation, solve it, and see if you get a true statement at the end, like 5 equals 5, 3 equals 3. If you get something that's not true, like 3 equals 5, you know that that is not a solution. Okay, so make sure you bring all your notes to class, and this is our last video of learning stuff that is new, so the next one will be a review video before our semester exam. So make sure you bring your stuff to class, come prepared, and bring any questions that we can go over together, and we'll do some practice. Thanks for watching.